guys, Hamish here. Just going to have a quick chat about the new first aid kits that have come onto the Tegere website. We've got the HIFAK, the hiking individual first aid kit. Comes in a green bag or the optional resealable plastic bag. So if you've got your own first aid pouch already and you just want to use the contents, you can do away with the green bag. I'll start off by going through the HIFAK, its contents, why we chose to put certain things in the kit, and some tips on what you can leave behind if you're worried about the weight. I chucked it on the scales quickly last night. Weighs in at about 900 grams with the bag, so it's might seem on the heavy side, but it's pretty comprehensive. It does come with a little leaflet of what's in the kit, and also just a quick first aid guide for those times when everything escapes your mind. Rightio. So these little antiseptic swabs, they just look like a little pipette of antiseptic cream. There's a few of those in there. We were going to put a whole tube in, but decided that maybe it was best just to have little once-off sachets, and they're replaceable. We'll be able to restock those in our shop and online down the track. 2 sets of nitrile examination gloves. They come in handy if you've come across someone that you don't know, you're worried about infection. It's just good practice to have gloves on. So we've got 2 sets of those in there. Splinter Probes, one of those things that you wish you had when you need them. Yeah, they seem a bit of a gimmick, but they're worth their weight if you're trying to dig out a splinter. Okay, on the dressing side, we've got 3 waterproof island dressings. They're really good for if you're in a rainy environment and you don't want the wound to get wet, or you might be crossing rivers, creeks, things like that, and there might be suspect stuff in the water. So it's just a good way of creating a bit of a barrier, and there's a little non-adherent pad underneath there. We've also got the normal island dressing, which has got the Fixation sort of tape around it. So it's basically like a non-waterproof version of the waterproof one. And we've put 5 of those in the kit. They're pretty handy. And if you're on a 3 or 4 day hike, then you're probably going to want to redress each day. So we've chucked enough in there for that. Combine dressing, it's just a handy sort of gauze pad to go over any cuts and abrasions, and you can kind of use it in a few different ways. Fold it over, thicken it up, cut it into smaller sections. So just a normal combine dressing for wound care. We've also got the heavy Conforming bandage, which is very similar to the snakebite bandage, can be used in place of a snakebite bandage, and on the converse, snakebite bandage can be used in place of that. So I would recommend, if you're carrying a snakebite kit, that you can leave that one at home, as you probably don't need it. Or if you're not carrying a snakebite kit, be mindful that that will work in the same way as a snakebite bandage, but you might need an extra one, so you could probably put 2 of these into your med kit and not carry a snakebite kit. One of my favourite items in the first aid kit is the little blunt, sharp scissors, they call them. These are really good for cutting sports strapping tape, Fixation tape, and basically anything in the first aid kit can be chopped up with those. They're super sharp, and you can get them in underneath band-aids, cut sections of bandage away. They're just really handy. Set of tweezers, always great. Sports strapping tape. Now, we've put a whole roll in there. it's just easier to have it in the kit that way. But I would recommend maybe just winding off 2 or 3 meters and wrapping it around a cigarette lighter, torch handle, something that you can wind it back off again. That way you're saving 1/3 of the weight. That's a 15-yard roll, so yeah, you could probably do that in thirds. A couple of eye wash and wound irrigation pippets. They're great. We've just chucked 2 in there. These things tend to go off their use by date fairly regularly in terms of how they get used, so we didn't want to put too many in there. In saying that, that's good till 2025. The non-woven fixation tape, this stuff's great for doing up any kind of blister management out on the field. I'll do a separate video on how we tackle blisters, but this stuff's great for putting over the top of band-aids or wound care that you've applied to a wound. Just gives it an extra barrier. It's also nice with your clothes rubbing against it because it doesn't pick up the adhesive on the underside. It sits nice and close to the skin. Butterfly closure strips, these are absolute gold if you have a big cut and you can't get stitches. They can be really handy for those sort of deep gashes that don't require emergency treatment, but you just want to keep it closed up, and then you can put that Fixable non-woven fixation tape over the top just to protect it. But yeah, those are a good baseline for gashes and lacerations. We've included 2 instant cold ice packs. These are single use, but we figured if you had a sprained ankle, any kind of situation where you have to elevate and ice an injury, these would be great, and having 2 means you can do 2 rounds of it until you get out to further care, rather than having 1 and then it going warm and then not having anything else to replace it. So we've gone for 2 small ice packs, and the aim is to use those effectively rather than having 1 big one and then missing your opportunity to get that icing. The fabric band-aids, as opposed to the plasticky ones, these always stick better and last a bit longer, and they don't peel off in segments like the plastic ones tend to. There's a pack of 25 in there. That's another one you can probably toss, half of those out, save a little bit of weight. Again, with the ice packs, you can, if you're not thinking you're going to need 2, or you want to cut weight, one of these dropped out will save you probably 80 or 90 grams. The military and trauma hemorrhage bandage, or the Israeli bandage, as it's more commonly known, I'll do a separate little video on how they're applied and what they look like when they're taken out of their wrapper. This is a little sterile bag, and then it's inside another little bag inside there, so you can do away with the grey packaging, and that's a great little all-in-one bandage. It's got a combined dressing underneath the bandage, and you basically wrap it around and then lock it off with a little plastic butterfly clip that's in there. They're a really good thing just to have in your backpack or in your car or something like that, because they're a pretty versatile piece of kit. The old space blanket, bit of a sort of throwaway item, but could be life-saving in the event of hypothermia. And they're so light they can be chucked in without even noticing. I also think that that's a good baseline. There are more comprehensive thermal blankets on the market, but this is probably the best sort of baseline to carry, and not a huge weight penalty. 2 non-adherent eye pads just in the event of an eye injury. It is nice if you're going to have one eye shut when you're out in the bush, to have a nice soft pad over it, just to make it a bit more comfortable. It's a pretty unusual experience getting around with one eye closed. I don't know if anyone's tried it, but it's quite uncomfortable. can play on your mind a little bit, so you want that to be as comfortable as possible. So having that over your eye is pretty handy. Put 2 in there, especially if you're doing it overnight before you can get to further treatment. You probably want to swap that out depending on what's happened underneath. And the burns dressing, this is a impregnated burns dressing. So basically just open it up, and after you've cooled your burn with cold fresh water for 20 minutes, applying that will sort of continue the cooling process until you get to proper care. This one is 10 by 10 centimeters, so it's quite big. If you've got 2 burns that are smaller than that, you can cut this in half into quarters, however you see fit. And yeah, that's a pretty handy bit of gear, because if you've got a campfire or anything like that where there's the likelihood of burns, you want to have something for burns management. And fresh water is not always readily available in the bush, so yeah, that could be your lifeline there. One of the sort of less common items seen in first aid kits, in my experience, is the foam splint. Previous iterations, the SAM conforming splint. This is the Aero splint. Basically a aluminium panel wrapped in foam, so it's all malleable. You'll be able to see there, it's got some instructions on the actual splint itself on how to apply it in different situations. I won't go into the details here, but basically you can mold it into any shape for an arm or a leg to splint if you've had a fracture. It can be used in snakebite management, and I've also used it as a windshield for my liquid fuel camp stove. So it's a handy bit of gear, and it's also nice to sit on if you haven't got anything soft to sit on. So it's something I always carry in my backpack, whether it's part of the first aid kit or not. It's just always in there. Not heavy at all for what it is, probably less than 100 grams. I'll check that, but yeah, pretty lightweight. You can get smaller ones and you can get bigger ones. We've gone for this size because it's long enough to be able to splint arms and legs, and yeah, it doesn't weigh a bomb. So that's the last bit in the kit. As I said, you can get it in the green first aid bag, or you can just get it as is and then find a pouch that suits you based on how much of the stuff you actually take. So the green bag fits all the contents that we've put into the bag. Obviously, if you take out some of the Band-Aids, some of the dressings and ice packs and things like that, it'll get a little bit smaller, so you can afford to get a smaller bag. So that was the reason we made the bag an option. So it's entirely up to you. All in all, a great versatile piece of kit, good for hiking, camping, kind of a good individual first aid kit, even if it's not used for hiking. It's basically what my first aid kit has been whittled down to over the last 5 or 6 years, based on what I've used, what I haven't used, what I've wished I needed in times when I've needed first aid. And yeah, it's available on the website now, and we could probably get one to you before Christmas if you're lucky. If you're in Melbourne, I'll even drop it off to you. Cheers, guys.